This is Mark Kastel, live from Lafarge, Wisconsin. That's in the middle of the country. Some people might call that flyover territory. I am the executive director of Organic Eye. We're a farm policy research group, but we're best known as an organic industry watchdog. This is the 20th year that our leadership has been engaged in this work. So I'm from the country. We usually talk about the weather for a while before we get into any substantive discussions. And it's only recently, I love Mark Twain, and it's only recently that I got his famous quote. But I only got it when I figured out how to emphasize part of the language. So you might know that everyone is talking about the weather, but nobody's doing anything about it. Okay, you can put your questions in the comments if you have an answer to that dilemma. In the meantime, thank you for joining us. I want to introduce Krista Carter, who is our technical guru on this call, and she will be introducing our format here. Krista, you want to take over for just a second?
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Just to echo what Mark said, thanks for joining us and being with us and being a little bit patient as we set everything up. I wanted to let you know, as you have any questions or comments during this broadcast, I do encourage you to utilize the chat feature either here or either on Facebook where we're streaming this, so that way we can have some time at the end for Mark to address any comments or answer any questions that you may have throughout this time period. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Krista. So Krista, I see you large in the screen. Does everyone else see you large on the screen, or are they watching me? Who's
looking at you, Mark? We're all looking at you.
Oh boy, I feel bad for everyone then. So I did see a little question flash up. I'll just say that this is being recorded. If you decide, now I can see myself. This is being recorded. If you decide you want to watch it again, oh, what masochism that would be. Or share it with someone that you hopefully like, but apologize on my behalf. And I'm not sure, there might be a transcript available eventually too on our website. So Krista is in charge of all that. So again, thank you very much for being here. Our main focus, our issue is watchdogging the organic industry that we all founded together, farmers, in a loving collaboration with consumers. And we found it to, the premise was this was a values-based industry for better food, economic justice for farmers, and obviously environmental stewardship. So when people betray the values, the foundational basis of organics, we want to speak up. And we'll talk about that in terms of eggs in a little bit. So I'm going to really present a few things quickly through free association, but really, as Krista said, I encourage you to ask questions or comment at the end and through either the comments on Facebook or the chat on Zoom. So, and please take notes, both for yourself and questions, to articulate questions and to share with people. There's no PowerPoint, there's no visuals, you're stuck with me. There's no safety net, I'm in free fall here. So I'm gonna cover the basic parameters. The basic categories of eggs are conventional and organic. The industry says conventional and specialty eggs. So most eggs in this country are produced by the largest corporate agribusinesses that primarily do conventional eggs. What they call specialty eggs are free range, and we'll get into that. High omega-3, that would be they add flaxseed to the ration, and organic. So for them, organic is just a marketing gimmick. Now, obviously, there are legal thresholds, legal requirements that, if they're enforced properly, makes a difference in the egg. And but the problem is that when we founded organics, we were either ignored or attacked by corporate agribusiness. Now, they figured out eventually that it would be more profitable to co-opt organics and own it than it would be to try to destroy it, because we all wanted organic food. So most organic food is coming from the same big food corporations as conventional food, unless you do your homework. And that's what this video series is about. And there are other subjects if you look at Kastel's Kitchen under resources on our website. So organic, what's the difference? Organic means that there are a lot of banned drugs that organic livestock can't have. And the feed that the animals consume have to be all certified organic, the same quality organic food that we eat for our families. The raw commodities have to be organic. And in theory, the law says that these animals have to be cared for in a more respected manner to afford them to exhibit what we refer to as their natural instinctive behaviors. So for ruminants like dairy cows, that means going out and grazing on grass. For chickens, that means what we call the foraging behavior, the scratch, 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 peck, 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 scratch. They're scratching the ground to uncover insects and weed seeds, which is part of their natural diet. And then they're pecking to consume them. But the industry is right now confining most of their animals. And we complained about that for years. They were, and still there's like a 5-year phase in. The USDA is allowing these biggest companies that have up to, I know of some hen houses with 190,000 birds in one building, and a little porch with a concrete floor and a metal roof and some screen sides that can only hold not even 1% of the birds. So that was cheating, blatantly cheating for years, and the USDA was letting them get away with that. They passed a new rule that requires outdoor access, even though the law initially did, only 2 square feet outdoors. Now, one of the name brands I know, Organic Valley, they have a minimum of 5 square feet. But even that pales in comparison to the European Union that requires 43 square feet per bird and no more than 3,000 in a building. You can have multiple buildings. So part of your homework, and I'll get at the end, is to do the research to figure out which eggs are really organic from happy chickens that can live a happy chicken life and a more nutrient-dense egg. Let's see, I want to talk about the different levels of organic eggs. I'll get into that in a little bit. But first, I want to talk about some of the dangerous pathogens that are circulating that I want everyone to be aware of. The newest one, obviously, is H5N1 high pathogenic avian influenza that has not only decimated many flocks of conventional and organic chicken, but is now in dairy cattle and has been contracted on a limited basis by some humans. So let me first talk about salmonella, because it's been a long time adulterant to eggs. It's dangerous. At a minimum, if you have the infection, it's a bacterium. It causes gastrointestinal distress, diarrhea, vomiting. You could certainly get very virulent cases, bloody diarrhea. But in the most serious cases, you could end up being hospitalized or dying from heart and brain complications. It can cause miscarriages. We don't want that in our food. And it's endemic in kind of factory livestock production. It shouldn't be in organics, but it can be. And part of the reason is that although you always hear organic livestock are prohibited from being administered antibiotics, and for poultry, both broiler chickens and laying hens, that's only the second day of their life. The first day they can get an antibiotic. My thesis, which we'd like to see some research on, and I have not yet, is that destroys the natural microbiome that a chicken would be born with. And that leaves a kind of a sterile playing field for opportunistic organisms to invade, and salmonella ends up being one of them. So we will be petitioning the USDA's National Organic Standards Board to prohibit the practice, because we know of at least one commercial hatchery in the country that has successfully raised chicks without any antibiotics in their entire lifetime, either in the shell or in the first day of birth. So be careful about salmonella. You want to practice very good kitchen hygiene. I treat eggs, all eggs, even the ones from the wonderful farm I'll tell you about that I get my eggs from. I treat them as toxic waste in my kitchen. You should treat raw milk or raw meat the same way, separate cutting boards, anything that gets splashed with the raw meat or eggs, you should thoroughly wash and sanitize, and minimize, they say don't wash chicken anymore before you cook it. Don't wash your eggs because it'll splash in your sink. Any organisms, if they're thoroughly cooked, I know the minimum temperature for poultry is 165, but very lightly cooked eggs might be more nutritious, and some folks prefer those, but they're riskier. You be the judge. So let's talk about the high path avian influenza, the H5N1. It's been, so to answer one of the questions, why the heck are eggs so expensive? Why are there shortages? Because this has been found in 50 states in both commercial and backyard flocks. When they find it, sadly, they destroy the flock because it's very easily transmittable, and these birds are going to end up dying anyways. It's very obviously not deadly yet to humans, but it is deadly to the poultry. And if you find wild birds dead outside, don't get near them, don't touch them. Use a shovel if you want to bury them. And so there have been, I've seen estimates of 30 million birds depopulated in all states. I've seen an estimate of 100 million. I don't know if that was just in the US or that was worldwide. I know one of the quote organic CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations, or factory farms that we've been fighting, named Herbrook in Michigan. I visited there once. They have multiple buildings, 190,000 birds per building. I think they were licensed for their nutrient management or manure management plan with the state for 1.7 million birds on a farm. They were forced to slaughter all their chickens. So that's a real shame. Our food shouldn't be coming from torture chambers like that, where the birds or ruminants or whatever the animals are live short and stressful lives. But that's the biggest reason why egg prices are up and the availability has been reduced, is there's a lot of flocks that have been, the polite term, depopulated, but euthanized. And it seems to just spread like wildfire. The other reason is just greed and corporate profiteering. There's a company called Cal-Maine, another one of the targets that we've tried to put out of the organic business. One of the main certifiers, Organic Tilth, certified another one of these million bird operations, I don't know the exact count, in Chase, Kansas. We filed a complaint against them also, and the USDA let them off the hook. Cal-Maine, although they've had to kill millions of their birds around the country, I don't know about in Chase, Kansas, conventional primarily, they reported to shareholders record earnings. Record earnings, that's the money that your friends are paying for mostly conventional eggs. So that's why we have a shortage. That's why we have expensive eggs. If anybody has a different answer, chime in. But that's what the experts say, and kind of my observations from looking at lots of industry reports. So before we get rid of talking about H5N1, it has been passed to some humans, And it has been lethal to some cats, not this cat. And that's Pippin, by the way. The humans have been generally milking cows, hardworking folks. They're exposed to aerosolized particles of milk. Evidently, humans have receptors, like cows have receptors in their udders for this particular bacterium. And so the most common malady is conjunctivitis. But there's been at least one death, and a few very serious people have been sickened, possibly from poultry. We don't really know exactly yet. But as I said, one of the ways they figured out that some of these barns, when they first figured out that these cows or herds were infected, was the barn cats started to die. So I can tell you that I've never been a dairy farmer, but I've been a dairy policy analyst and a relief farmer. And when we milk cows, we evacuate a little bit of milk from the udder, and we have what's called a teat cup, and we give that milk because we want just very clean milk to come out into the milking machine. So we give that milk to cats. So cats started dying. There have been some cats who've died, big cats in zoos and sanctuaries for large felines. So it is lethal. And the biggest risk, so the risk today to humans is minimal. There's been minimal problems and no transmission yet that I've seen documented from human to human. That could change. The term that is very scary is reassortment. That the danger is that a human becomes infected while they're infected with a different strain of influenza, which is able to be transmitted from human to human. And now this new hybrid organism starts to spread. That's the prescription for a, quote, pandemic. That when we've had widespread pandemics with high mortality rates, these have been novel organisms that have passed from animals to humans, and which is allegedly how SARS-CoV-2, COVID, has impacted the human population. And we won't debate whether that came from a wet market in Wuhan, China, or a laboratory. Either way, the foundational organism was based in another species. So if there are any questions on that at the end, I'll get to that. I'm going to repeat for people who've come in late that if you have a question or comment, please put that in the comment section on Facebook, or for the people on Zoom, they can use the chat feature, and Krista will be consolidating those and trying to read them off in a little bit. So I want to talk about how to choose the best organic eggs. So number one, you want organic eggs. The higher you eat up the food chain, the more you want organic, whether that's milk, dairy products, eggs, meat, and poultry, because those animals are consuming hundreds or thousands of pounds of conventional feed if they're not organic. And they're going to, the term we use, bioaccumulate some of those petrochemically based petrochemicals or agrochemicals into their tissues, especially in the fatty tissues. And we don't want that in our food supply. We don't want hormones and drug residues in our food supply. We don't want some of the contaminants that are in sewage sludge in our food supply. So don't panic, go organic. And so I left conventional agriculture about 40 years ago after pesticide poisoning and being almost disabled, and went on organic food, and my health has improved dramatically. And so practice preventative medicine. Organic food is not cheap, but healthcare for ourselves, our families, and our society is incredibly expensive. We have the cheapest food in the world, bar none, as a percentage of our income, and the most expensive healthcare by multiples. How's our health doing? So conventional, forget about that. I'm not going to talk about it. accepting that almost all still today, conventional eggs are confined in a cage, multiple hens in just a very small amount of space under tremendous emotional and physical stress, aggressively pecked on and sometimes killed by their flock mates. And so California and some other states, and for marketing reasons, some companies have now gone to cage-free. And all that means is an aviary system. I talked about Herbrooks in Michigan doing organic eggs on multiple levels, 2-story buildings, maybe 5 levels per building in an aviary system. It's called a glorified cage because there's no bars on the front, but all the feed is on a conveyor belt right in front of them. And there's massive birds in this facility. They can't get down. They can't get outside. They can't even go on that little porch. They can hardly move. And so that's BS, folks. That's a term we use on the farm here. So some poultry for broilers and laying hens are cage-free. Without aviary system, we call those floor birds. They could be packed, maybe one bird for every 1 to 1.5 feet. That's not much of a rife. They're living in their own excrement. And a lot of organic birds are raised that way for both meat and eggs. The next stage we have here is a kind of free range, and where they allow some outdoor access. But when I go to even typical organic hen houses that have 1,000 to 30,000 birds per building, maybe 1 to 3% are outside. Even though they have little doors, even though it's not a porch, it's legitimately outdoors, but there are all kinds of reasons they never go out. The USDA is allowing confinement of birds for 26 weeks, the pullets, before they're old enough to lay eggs, never go outside. Then they're allowing 5 more weeks for confinement once they get in the laying houses to get used to their nesting boxes. A lot of family farmers let them out right away. There's no need for that. So 31 weeks, they've never seen the outside. I can tell you, little Pippin that doesn't go outside, he's scared outside. And those birds are scared. Or they have these little doors that flip open where the bird on the inside, they can't see the sky. And they're instinctively scared of avian predators, hawks and eagles and owls. And so they can't see the sky. They don't want to go out there. And then these buildings that have 20, 30, 40,000 birds in them have what's called flow-through ventilation. This is where if I had a PowerPoint, you'd see a picture. But they open louvers on one end for makeup air, and all the air flows through to giant fans, enormous fans, multiple fans. So it's flowing through the building. What happens when you open up these little doors that are, literally just a couple square feet, that the air rushes in? It's like a hurricane in the face of these chickens. They don't want to go outside. There's no feed outside. There's no water outside on most of these operations. And a lot of them, there's hardly any shade outside. And so they don't go outside. So the next level up in terms of quality are a number of companies that are charging more for their eggs, and they're marketing them as pastured poultry. The 2 largest companies are Vital Farms and Handsome Brook. They're now both owned by not organic farmers, but they're owned by equity, venture capital kind of companies, private equity. They buy from mostly Amish and Mennonite farms under contract, which can be an abusive situation. I don't know that is in this case. I know if you're a contract poultry producer shipping to Tyson, you're like an indentured servant. But they have 106 square feet outside, and they're humane certified. And when I visited them, they have larger doors, bigger doors, and about half, 40 to 60% of the birds were outside. That's a big improvement. That's what standard organic should be. Standard. I don't call that pastured poultry. Here's what we call pastured poultry. The term was invented by Joel Salatin, a friend of mine who farms in Virginia. When I visited his farm, he has what he calls an eggmobile, a trailer that he moves in the pasture. The poultry, not a house of thousands of birds surrounded by a bunch of area that gets pecked on, but he moves that every day to a clean piece of grass so the birds can eat the insects, the weeds, the grasses. They're never living in their own excrement. When I looked in his egg mobile, instead of 97% of the birds being inside, or 90, or half the birds, there were maybe 3% of the birds inside, 97% outside. So the gold standard, and I'll tell you in a second how to find this in your neighborhood, is to contract or buy eggs directly from a pastured poultry producer in your food shed, either directly from the farmer. They might deliver them to your town as part of a CSA. They might deliver them to the member-owned natural foods grocery co-op in your community. They might deliver them to the independently owned natural food grocery store. And so these are, you can find these. They're not that common, but they are just unparalleled in terms of nutrition, flavor. The animals are having a nice life. So I really encourage that. Now, I buy my eggs from an outfit called St. Bridget's Meadow. I also buy my meat 100% grass-fed, grass-finished beef from them. They pasture poultry. They have electric netting for their meat birds, and they have a fixed chicken coop, but they only have a couple hundred birds. So it's like old-time diversified farms. When I pull up in the farm drive, the chickens scatter. They're all over the place. They're eating whatever they want to eat. They're having a really nice chicken life. They all go back in all these systems. They go back in the chicken coop at night, because that's when the predators come out. That's when the owls, the hawks, the weasels, the foxes, the coyotes. We like the way chicken tastes. They really like the way chicken tastes too. So they have to be protected. We don't want them to be victims. We want their eggs. They're sharing them with us. And we want them to live a full life, healthy life. So they all go in, they come back out. So your local farmer might not have a mobile coop, but might have a reasonable number of birds. They might let them out every single day. If they raise pullets, they might let them out at 2 weeks, not 26 weeks. So you need to do your homework. I'll tell you how we'll help in a second. So I don't call Hanson Brook and Vital Farms pastured poultry. I call them enhanced outdoor access. They're good eggs. They're not the best eggs, but they charge as much or more than what you might find the best eggs for. Now, here's another kicker. I interviewed someone at Vital Farms on the phone the other day. They told me that because of avian influenza, 70% of the birds are being confined and not let out. So they're no better than any other bird that's getting organic feed right now, or most of them aren't. And then I called the USDA to find out if they were provided an exemption. There are some dairy farms in California in drought areas right now that aren't required to graze because there's no grass, it's dead. But no chicken coop has got an exemption right now, but they told me 70% of their birds are confined. They either need to cut their prices in half, or you need to find different eggs. And we'll be filing a complaint with the USDA. We hope they'll have a sit down and talk, because if they're in an area, and a lot of the eggs from Vital Farms and Hanson Brooks are in places like Arkansas and Missouri, where you can let them out year round, unless there are other flocks that have been infected with high pathogenic influenza, or unless they're under a flyaway with wild birds migrating, they should let their birds out. So we'll work that out. But right now it sounds like they're not complying, and their certifier for Hanson Brook, for Vital Farms, which I don't know if Hanson Brook is confining. They haven't responded to my inquiries, but Vital Farms isn't complying with the law, and they're certified by Oregon Tilth. And the certifier is another way to find good eggs. So I'll divert it, and I'll talk about that right now. If you go to organiceye.com, edit that out. If you go to organici.org, organiceye.org, and you scroll down on the news, on the news from the gumshoes, the detectives, you'll find a infographic listing the best certifiers in the country. There are 10 that will not certify livestock factories for ruminants or chickens. They won't certify hydroponic fruit and vegetable productions in giant football-sized field greenhouses with no organic soil. They get liquid fertilizer from conventional soybeans and other products. That is not legal. The USDA, again, is letting them get away with it. I say it's not legal because we read, I use the word allegedly, we read the law. The law says that you have to steward your soil to be qualified as organic. How do you do that without soil? So there are 10 certifiers listed as the best in the country. If you look at that chart and you find somebody certified by one of the NOFA, Northeast Organic Farming Association certifiers, or Vermont Organics, or Maine Organic, or Bay State, which is in Massachusetts, or OCIA, or OneCert. I'm just going off the top of the head. I'm missing some, so you should look at them. That's like doing your homework. You know, they might not be pastured and the gold standard, but at least they're going outside and they're meeting all the minimum requirements. So take a look at that. For the Organic Eye members on this call, we will be sending you some materials this spring on how to use certifiers as a choice. If you aren't a member, you can go to our website and click on donate. We have no minimum donation, but we'd love to have you. You give us the authority to speak out and do this work. But we also have a free news feed, so you can sign up without making a donation if you want. We will keep you posted on using the certifiers. If it's one of the big certifiers like QAI, Quality Assurance International, CCOF, Oregon Tilth, that does that big factory farm, they did at least in Chase, Kansas for Cal-Maine. There are some good companies that have chosen bad certifiers because we didn't know they were bad until Organic Eye started doing our research. So it doesn't automatically mean that's somehow fraudulent organic food, but it doesn't mean, it means you need to do your homework. Pastured poultry, regular organic poultry, that's the gold standard. How to find the best eggs, use the certifier as a guide. Go to organici.org and click on resources, click one finger, resources. And then there is, I'm sorry, edit that one out too. Click on FAQs. And there's a question, how do I find great organic food? There are 2 organic labels out there. They both look the same. They're green and white. They say USDA organic. One is certified by those 10 heroes in the certification business. The other is a mystery. It's all secret. The USDA allows them to treat how they farm as CBI, confidential business information. There's nothing secretive in farming. We should all know how organic food is raised, but we don't. So use the certifier, but there's 2 organic labels. And one has a lot to do with local and regional. So I, in doing this work for over 20 years now, have found virtually 0 fraud when you get to meet the farmer. When you buy a box of CSA food delivered to your community, when you buy directly from the farmer at a farmer's market or a farm stand, this is great food. You can look them in the eye, shake her hand, shake his hand. If you go to a farmer-owned member-owned food cooperative, they know the farmers directly and they're vetting them for you, or an independently owned store. So if you go to the FAQs, there are a number of resources where you can put your address or your zip code in, and it will tell you what farm direct marketers can you buy great food from. So one is Eat Wild, a website. One is Local Harvest. One is Real Organic. These are great tools. And I don't know anybody in the country that can't find farmers that will sell into your community. I'm really lucky. I live in a county in rural Wisconsin that might have more organic farmers than any county in the country. So my food co-op, excuse me, is like a farmer's market 7 days a week. Excuse me, good well water. So I've also, before I end here, those are the tools. The FAQs on our website, the certifier infographic, which is on our website. I want to close in saying there's a lot of people who are sick and suffering right now. Last week, I was shocked within like 2 hours to learn that one of our staff members had tested positive for COVID. Another one was sick. I'm not sure what was wrong with Julie, and she's better now, luckily. And a third was 10 miles away from the largest fire burning through Los Angeles and still is impacted by air quality. And I'm hoping the rest of our staff around the country are healthy. But if you or your family are impacted, especially these folks who've lost everything in California, our hearts go out to them. I've sent a message to all of our members out there. I've heard from some. Luckily, I haven't heard of any catastrophes. I know one farm lost fencing in one of their outbuildings, and I don't know if that was in LA or Ventura County. So if you haven't already made a charitable contribution supporting the people out there, I really hope you'll consider it. Krista, would you take back over, and can we cut and spend a few minutes answering some questions?
Absolutely, Mark.
Okay.
I've got just a couple.
I can't see you. So
I have you spotlit.
Okay.
So you're gonna, since you'll be the one answering the questions, I think it makes the most sense.
Okay, I can usually read your list, but go ahead.
Just a few. So, and this relates to what you were just saying about resources and things of the like. So someone asked, are there any sources for non-soy chicken rations? And what about getting in touch with egg producers who are avoiding conventional rations? Yes,
you're going to have to research that on a local basis. If you go to one of those resources on the FAQs at organici.org, it will give you, for instance, websites for the farms, or certainly their phone numbers. A lot of farmers know that people are sensitive and don't, the argument is that soy had never traditionally been part of the human diet or diets for a lot of livestock. In Asia, certain cultures have had a very minimal amount of soy in their diet, not their whole diet, or the soy has been fermented like miso or tempeh. And so there are egg producers and poultry producers that make the marketing claim no soy. Another one of the resources on the FAQs is the Weston A. Price Foundation. They have chapters around the country, and those chapter leaders help you find the great farms in their geographic vicinity. And so you can find soy-free feed. Some commercial feed mills supply that ration. And I encourage you, if that's an interest for you, to do your homework. Krista.
Yep. So another question, how do you feel, or what are your thoughts on bird flu being politicized to try and ban raw milk?
That's a good question. Okay, there has been raw milk in my kitchen for decades. And people need to do their own research and for themselves and make decisions on the risk benefits. Can raw milk be contaminated? Yes, it can. The largest contamination that sickened people in this country was from pasteurized milk at the grocery chain owned dairy plant in Chicago owned by the Jewel food store chain many years ago. So, but raw milk contains a lot of good organisms in terms of health, not just bad organisms. Now, I've had raw milk. I've never had a problem with it. It doesn't mean that some other person wouldn't. I am very careful about the raw milk I consume. The largest raw milk purveyor in California has had some contamination problems. They have thousands of cows. My milk comes from a small farm whose cows have names, not numbers. And that's certified organic, and that's 100% grass, which is very unusual. You might not be able to find 100% grass raw milk dairy. Now, there's an important caveat here. The last time I brought raw milk into my home, I only made yogurt out of it, and that's basically pasteurizing it. If you raise the temperature to 180 degrees to what the dairy industry would say, condition the milk before you cool it down and culture it. I am paranoid not about my own well-being. This is a great farm. There's a community of people who buy from this farmer. We're going to know right away if there's a problem. I'm concerned about my cats because it has proven to be fatal to cats. To my knowledge, with the hype about raw milk and H5N1, there has never been a documented case of somebody contracting it from milk in their homes, but there have been cases of pets dying. And I love my kitties, and I'm not going to take the risk for the time being. So I'm either going to bring in pasteurized yogurt from Seven Stars or Hawthorne Valley. There's another one of these Kastel kitchens on the best yogurt brands in the country. Or I'm going to do it myself very carefully, have the cats locked up, bring them back out after the yogurt has been pasteurized. So poor kitties, they love that raw milk. They don't get it anymore. They don't for temporary purposes. Go ahead, Krista. We got any other good questions? These are good so far. Thank you.
We do. We have a couple. One is a specific scenario, so I'll read it to you. So we have one listener who says that they get eggs from a local farm that says that they're pasture raised and they see the coops, but he also says that when it's off season, he uses non-GMO feed. Is there a way to verify this by looking at the yolks or the whites of the eggs?
Well, probably not really. The pasture eggs usually have darker yolks, but there are people that year-round will add kelp, and that's a good nutrient for the birds for their health, and it creates a darker yolk. My friend Joel Salatin, his mobile coops in the winter come into these giant hoop houses where he grows his tomatoes in the summer. They can still go out in the winter, but it's warm and nice, and he adds kelp in the winter. Do not buy, this is my personal opinion, eggs from companies that say, oh, we're beyond organic, we're pasturing them, and we use non-GMO in the winter. When I asked Joel, who's the best grazer or pasture of chickens, what's the difference in your feed ration in the summer versus the winter? These chickens, this is really an important point here to pay attention to. These chickens are not ruminants. God created these beef cows and dairy cows and sheep and goats to eat grass. We can't eat grass, so they can go on the steep hillside of my farm and graze where we can't grow vegetables or corn or any other feed. And they turn that into food that we can eat. It's ecologically sound. The cows are healthy eating all grass. They're very unhealthy, stuck in a feedlot eating force feed corn or expired Twinkies or other garbage. They feed conventional dairy beef cattle. So when I asked Joel what the difference is in the winter, 100% of what they're eating is stored feed. In the summer, it's 85%. So 80% in the summer of what those chickens are eating when it's somebody who's not feeding organic feed is conventional. And non-GMO feed, there's only one good thing comparing it to organic. Organic is non-GMO. Conventional non-GMO is non-GMO. But you could still use herbicides. You could still use petrochemically based fertilizers. You could certainly use agrochemical, synthetic insecticides, synthetic fungicides, all kinds of things you can't use that the chicken is going to take into her egg. So I don't eat conventional food anymore. I was sick. I'm healthy now. So I really encourage you to find local farms that feed it. The farm might not be certified. There are cases where I encourage certification, but they're small. But they buy organic feed from the local feed mill, which is certified organic. That's what you want to look for. Go ahead, Krista, with another question. That was a really important question. Thank you.
Yeah. So what can make some eggs contain more linoleic acid than others?
Well, basically the same way that some milk and some meat contains more of CLA and omega-3 fatty acids. And that's from eating green vegetative matter that's connected to the earth. So the layers that are in that gold standard rotated in the pasture, either moving electric fencing, which is usually not every day, but frequently, or moving a mobile chicken coop. It could be an old school bus or an old trailer, or they build something fancy. That's going to have your highest nutrition. And again, let's talk about omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acid ratios. Historically, humans have, what we've consumed have been about an even balance. But with all the corn-based sweeteners and all the seed oil that is in so much conventional food and organic food, we have a whacked out ratio. So when you eat fatty fish, and the safest fish are like salmon and sardines are wonderful if you could find a good brand in spring water, not in fake olive oil. You're going to get really good nutritional components, and the same thing with eggs. So now some brands are marketing omega-3 eggs, and they're supplementing the feed with oh, I'm having a mental block. What's the seed? Help me, Krista. Somebody help. I said it earlier, but hey, I'm getting old. So you can supplement the feed for higher omega-3, and they're labeling their eggs that way as a flaxseed. Thank you. Somebody just, thank you. We're all smarter together. So they can supplement it with flaxseed, or you can take fish oil supplements, but I like getting it from my food. So I have a can of at least 1 or 2 Alaskan salmon every week, and a couple cans of sardines. Usually they're from Portugal. Don't eat farm-raised salmon. It's not as high in omega-3s. It's being fed conventional feed and all kinds of drugs, and it's terrible for the environment. If it says Alaskan salmon, it's all farm-raised. If it says Norwegian salmon, it's all farm-raised. If it says Alaskan, it's always wild. So that's the best source of omega-3s are the fish, fatty fish. Krista.
Yep, we have a couple more questions, and I know we're coming up here on time, so maybe we can try and be a little quick in them. So one question is that I believe Vital Farms is now selling eggs that are raised on regenerative farming. Do you think that this is worth the extra cost?
Regenerative right now means whatever the sales manager decides it means. Organic, if the laws are enforced, and that's our job at Organic Eye, should mean regenerative agriculture. But regenerative, there are people labeling regenerative that use Monsanto Bayer's Roundup herbicide, but they're regenerative. So it's really a squishy word. And true organic or true regenerative agriculture is obviously meritorious. So the best organic farm is the one you really want to try to find, whether they label it regenerative or not. Krista.
Can you speak to the role of subsidies in the use of soy, corn, and the existence of CAFOs?
Yes. Well, I'll try to do it briefly because I could spend an hour on that. We subsidize grain production, and so we supplement the incomes. It's like the earned income tax credit. If Walmart can't pay a living wage, all the taxpayers pool money, and we subsidize that, the earned income tax credit. And then we subsidize healthcare for the giant corporations for their low wage earners. So if farmers can't make enough from growing soybeans and corn, the taxpayers supplement that. And that gives bargain basement prices to Cargill and ConAgra and the big egg companies. And so that's just unfair. A truly sustainable farm that is growing their feed for their own animals, they're not in as advantageous a financial situation. So we disincentivize growing pasture-based livestock, and we make this cheap food that's high in omega-3 fatty acids, high in agrochemical residues. These cows that are raised in feedlots are morbidly obese. They have fatty livers. They're mostly diabetic. They would never live out a full life. And same with the cows on confinement factory dairy farms, whether they're organic or conventional. Whereas I have dairy farmers I work for, not only do they have cows with names, not numbers, some of them joked and said, my oldest cows are going to be old enough to vote someday. They live a much more natural lifespan, and they're not pushed for high production with unhealthy diets. And those unhealthy diets we pay for out of our tax money.
All right, we have another situation here. So someone buys eggs from their farmer where they also get the raw milk. Sometimes can taste a flavor in the eggs, which is like an antibiotic or penicillin flavor. Says that they use a feed from the local store and they don't believe that there's anything in it, but sometimes they can taste it. Not always, but just occasionally. Do you know if companies will change up what they add to their standardized formulas?
They need to be buying certified organic feed, period. If you're not, you're getting, I don't believe this is fed or legally fed to laying hens, but there's something called medicated feed that does have antibiotics in it and might be fed to layers. It's certainly fed to calves, medicated milk replacement. They don't even feed milk. You know, certified organic cows, what do they drink? What do they consume when before they're weaned? The calves, the babies are fed organic milk, the same quality of milk that we consume. And on conventional farms, they're fed, it's got blood meal in it. It's got all kinds of nasty stuff, including antibiotics. So I'll bang this drum. Certified organic feed. If what your chickens are eating is not organic, your eggs aren't organic. It's worth the premium to buy organic eggs. Go ahead, Kristen.
Last question, and this relates to a brand of feed. Do you know anything about Excel chicken feed and its quality?
No, I'm sorry. I've never tracked most feed that most feed that commercial scale organic farmers buy comes from a local feed mill, which is blending it from different commodities along with a vitamin mineral package, and they create this ration. And it's unbranded. It's produced at the local facility. And the branded feed might be available in like Farm and Fleet or Tractor Supply Company. And if it's on the bag, has a USDA seal on it, you know that some certifier, hopefully one of the good ones, is checking the process to make sure the only thing that goes in that bag has been traced back to a farm that's raising it organically, and there's no additives that wouldn't be legal to use in organic. So again, I'm banging that drum. Only organic feed. Only organic feed. Thank you, Krista, for shepherding us through this process. If we see a few questions online that we didn't get to, we'll try to answer them in the next few days. Please, if you're not already a member, sign up, financially support this work. We don't get USDA money the way some nonprofits do. We don't get corporate money. We get money from mostly farmers and the eaters that are there, that respect these farmers and want them to thrive and want authentic organic food. So you can make a difference by supporting us. But if you're not ready to contribute, please still engage with us. It's really important that we all share the knowledge. So sign up for our free news feed on the website. Either way, we'd like to keep connected, and then you'll know when the next Kastel's Kitchen come up, which is mostly about products that I have in my own kitchen. And if you look at some of the older episodes, it names names. It names name brands that you can buy in your stores that are in my kitchen, because I've spent 35 years researching this and I know the very best, and I want it for you too. Krista, thank you so much, as usual, for being part of our team and the good work you do on an ongoing basis. And thanks everybody for your good questions. Please share this information with your friends and family so we support the best farmers and you have the very best food.